One of the things that I often talk with other writers about, and I have people talking to me about, is they don't understand how to really set the mood or build the tension the right way, or how do you create a sense of suspense. And one of the best bits of advice that I was given at a writer's conference was to watch certain movies. The first movie that they told me to watch was a French movie, which means it's going to be in English subtitles, but even so, it's still a really great movie to watch. And it is called The Wages of Fear. And it's set in South America at this really beat up village, which is part of a mining operation. One of the well sites where they, have their oil rigs and everything, there's a massive fire. The only way they can put it out is to put a ring of nitroglycerin around it and blow it up to implode everything. There's just one problem, one really, really big problem. The village is over here. The fire is over here. And in between, a whole bunch of mountains. Washed out roads, landslides, and everything else. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with nitroglycerin, but it is a very volatile mixture, and the slightest movement when it's in its liquid form. Now, one of the things that I thought, okay, I started watching it and I tried to pick out the main character because nothing's ever going to happen to the main character. This was when I realized I was probably in over my head. They never focus on any one person. You got this whole mining camp and this whole village, and all these people are coming in, and you're introduced to all these people in the first part of the movie. Who's going to be the main character? Well, they go on. They finally get it whittled down to just 4 guys. But you still don't know who the main character is. Now, at the opening credits, they listed all the stars, and if you know who any of these people are, and remember, this is made back in the 60s, you should be all set. I didn't. So I had no clue who the main character was. And then once you get settled down on those 4 guys that are going to drive these trucks filled with nitroglycerin, you then switch back and forth between each truck because they realize each one is in a different situation, faces different circumstances. They know there is this stretch of road that's washboard. Dun, 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 dun. Recipe for disaster. Well, they calculate how fast they have to go in order for things not to bounce. They both work on it. They both get up to that certain speed. One of the trucks runs into a problem. Animal runs out. They had to slam on the brakes. Are they going to be able to get up enough speed when they get up there? And it was all sorts of things like that even though it was a foreign movie in subtitles and I had to divide my attention between the subtitles and the action on the screen, by the time the movie was over, I found I really was sitting at the edge of my seat. So that is probably one that you should make sure you have a good stiff drink while you're watching it, if not a very large bowl of popcorn. But it's called The Wages of Fear. And even when everything got done, and at the end of the movie, the next to the last scene, when you finally find out who the main character is, it was a surprise ending. Another movie for building tension and suspense, especially between the different characters, is an Alfred Hitchcock movie called Lifeboat. And it's set during World War II, where a merchant vessel gets sunk by a German submarine. The submarine also gets destroyed. Well, all these survivors are adrift in a lifeboat. And it starts out with just this one woman, and then a sailor comes to it, swimming out of the mist, and then they pick up some others. Well, you've got a multimillionaire, you have a member of the Communist Party, so you have some political tensions and class tensions. You have a woman who was fleeing a broken romance that is starting to fall in love with another refugee that they picked up, another survivor. So you have some emotional tensions. And then they rescue one of the black crew members who didn't know if he would be welcome on the boat, because this is back in the 1940s when things were very, very clearly segregated. So you have ethnic tensions. And then you have injured people. You have someone who's going through a mental breakdown because their baby drowned. And then in the midst of all that, they find somebody else calling for help. And it turns out it's the captain of the German submarine. So now you have even more tensions. And then through it all, they sit down and they figure out what they need to do to survive. And they're very logical and focused and altruistic and idealistic when everything sets in. And then they hit all kinds of challenges. Sabotage. Who's been doing this? Storms, accidents, illnesses. Who's going to have a mental breakdown? A couple of people commit suicide. Who's going to be the next one? Are they going to get found? And then each time they hit an obstacle, they deal with the disaster, they confront it, they figure out a way to get around it. There's another one waiting for them, and they all have to work together. But you see all the tensions I talked about coming into play. So if you want to know how to make sure your readers are paying attention and always going to turn the next page, always toss out little cliffhangers like Wages of Fear. You want to make sure your characters are believable. Make sure there is conflict, some tension. It could be, like I said, the sexual tension, the ethnic tension, the class tension, the racial tension, all sorts of things that are going to be an underlying theme in your story. You really want to get your readers' attention? Make sure you end each chapter with a little bit of a cliffhanger. What I like to do in my stories is I will end on one note, and in the next chapter, I might deal with something else. So then they got to stick around to find out when are we getting back on that storyline. And that is, yes, it is a dirty trick, because that's something that I picked up again from movies, and that was the old serials that they used to play in the movie theaters. You never knew how it was going to turn out. You'd have the ending, and then that was it. You had to come back the next month to watch the next installment. So they knew they were going to get you. And if you're going to pay X amount of dollars or whatever to buy a movie ticket, you weren't just going to stay for that one serial. You were going to see the main feature. So that was how they did it in the old days to get you to pay attention. Try doing that same thing with your writing. I like doing it myself just because it also keeps me from getting bored with my story. Yes, I theoretically know how everything's going to end up. But sometimes when the story's getting told, you realize that it wants to go in a different direction than what you planned. If you want to convey a sense of excitement and interest to your readers, make sure you keep a little bit of interest and excitement for yourself.